My name is Bilal Warzai, an associate member of MUSA, and today we're bringing to you a topic which concerns us all, destruction of the family, by Sheikh Aslam Abu Ismail. He just quickly popped outside, just for this coughing, so he'll be back shortly. Just a brief introduction to some of you who may have actually missed the introduction yesterday. Sheikh Aslam is originally from India, and he's studied in the Islamic University of Al-Madinah. He's been involved in the dawah for over 23 or 24 years, and his specialty is fiqh in Arabic or in English, Islamic jurisprudence. In addition to that, he's also specialized for over 10 or 12 years in parenting and also in marriage skills. And apart from his Islamic studies, he's also pursued a degree in dentistry. So he's also a dentist by profession. Today, Sheikh Aslam will take us through a topic, just like I said, that concerns us all, destruction of the family. So the outline of the lecture will go as follows. Sheikh Aslam will get up, inshallah, and give us a talk or take us through the lecture. Towards the end of his lecture, we will open the floor for the audience for questions and answers. Please don't feel shy to ask any questions. This is your opportunity to ask live questions and get live answers. So feel free to ask any questions that you may have, any sort of misconceptions in your mind about this topic will be kindly appreciated. So without further ado, I'd like to kindly request Sheikh Hassan to please come forward. Thank you for your attention.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. I was going to ask later in my talk today the reason for destruction of the family, but I can see it in front of me already. Do you know what it is? So many mums to be in the future and no dads to be in the future. So I guess that must be the reason why that's the case, isn't it? Okay, the destruction of the family, this topic, it's a very, very important topic because every one of us, except for the rare exception, every one of us is going to be a parent one day, inshallah. And when you become a parent, you realize that the thing that matters the most to you in life, the thing that is the closest to your heart in life is, of course, our children. So then, at that time, this investment in this world, our children, for the eternal life, when we actually get to that situation, what do we do thereafter? Because we can prepare for our children's upbringing by even thinking about it from now before we even get married. One way we can think about it is who we actually get married to, who your husband's going to be, who your wife's going to be. Because one day they're going to be one of the most important people in the life of your children. In fact, the Prophet ﷺ actually said, even in a hadith, he said, choose for your offspring the suitable. He said the suitable parent. The Prophet said it in his own words, but in English I'm translating it like this. Choose for your offspring the suitable parent. Meaning, even before you get married, prepare yourself for probably the most joyful episode of your life. That will be when you have kids. Before you get married, everybody thinks before they get married that the most fun time of their life is going to be with the husband and the wife. It will be. But you know, when the children come into the family, it just adds to the fun between the husband and the wife. And that's what I'm hoping to talk about today. It's about looking after our families, caring for our families, and how we can do that. When we talk about the destruction of the family, the first thing that comes to people's minds is when the children start going away from the parents. When the children start going away from the parents and the parents lose their kids. This is the first thing that comes to our mind when the kids go away from their parents. But you know what? When we talk about the destruction of the family, there's another aspect that is really so important as well. You know what that aspect is? That is our children being distanced from their Creator, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is part of the destruction of the family as well. our children being distanced from the Creator, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is something we should care about when we talk about the destruction of the family as well. When we talk about having a great family, it's not only enough, when we talk about having a great family, it's not just enough that our kids have got great job, business, money, and so on. What's also important is that the kids, as much as they love their parents, they ought to love their Creator as well, isn't it? As much as they appreciate their parents, they ought to appreciate the Creator for what He has given to them by giving them birth, giving them everything else they've got, and so on. So when we talk about having a good family, let's not forget that our connection, our relationship with our Creator, that's also an important ingredient of a successful, good, proper, happy family. So then, let's begin by asking ourselves, today many people would say that yes, there is a destruction of families across the world. What do you think are 3 of the main reasons for the destruction of families around the world? Anybody have any guesses? I mean, anyone have their own comments, observations? What do you think are 3 of the main contributions, 3 of the main factors that lead to the destruction of the family in the world today? What do you think that could be? Have a guess, have a go. What do you think it could be? Yes?
I think maybe industrialization had an effect on changing the structure of families. So,
Okay.
you know, more women working in the workforce and less time at home, so bonding between the children
Okay.
to a
Okay.
certain extent.
Very good point the brother mentioned. He said the industrialization that's happened in the world, that could have contributed to this, as a result of which the parents and the mum, they are out and busy, not having much time for the kids, and as a result, the kids without much guidance, without much love, without much care, and so on. One good point. What else do you think could have contributed to the destruction of the family in our time today? The sister there?
So
I'll come back in a minute.
fathers that aren't around for their kids are away way too often and do not play a role in their children's lives.
Yep, okay. Many fathers thinking that their kids is not their business and that they will be raised automatically in the industrial society. But obviously that is not the case. The father's involvement in the kids being a role model and being involved in so many ways is important as well, isn't it? So them being involved in the kids' lives, that's another point. You had your hand up as well.
Parents that don't realize what their responsibilities are when they become parents.
Okay, as we all heard the brother mentioning, that parents not realizing what their responsibility is as parents once they become parents, and maybe thinking that just putting food on the plate is all their responsibility is, but instead giving the love, the emotion, the guidance, and the care, and all of these things, this is part of what their responsibility as a parent is as well, isn't it? Not just a matter of putting food on the plate and that's it. So then, that's good. These are the really 3 important factors that contributed some way or another to the destruction of the family today. 3 other points that I had, and maybe I think people have already sort of mentioned them partially. 3 points that I had also, that I noted down when I also thought about it and read about it and researched about it as well. Some of the causes for the destruction of the family today, one thing is the generation gap, as some of the writers have pointed out. The generation gap, meaning the kids, when they come into the family, there is a generation gap between them and the parents. The kids can't relate to their parents, and the parents don't have an idea what's happening in the lives of their kids. So the generation gap is a real phenomenon today. And you know what? I've actually not only researched by reading from people, but I also had a chance to interview people for this thing as well. And when I interviewed people who lived and now are very old, but from a very long time ago, and you know, I interviewed people from different countries, different continents, and one thing I realized from them all is that this generation gap phenomenon, it did not exist back then. Even as much as 80, 90 years ago, the generation gap did not exist. Now, I see some surprises on people's faces. I mean, we don't have that much time to go into this now, but just to elaborate on what I'm talking about. See, today, what I mean by generation gap is the generation gap in the mind between the parents and the children. This did not exist before. Why? And how come it exists today? As people have pointed out, I've read about this in books and I've interviewed and I've discovered this as well. How did the generation gap come about? In the earlier days, and when I say early days, I'm not talking about the days when people used to go on a donkey and a camel across the desert. I'm talking about the days when we still, had cars. Let's just say we had cars back in those days, right? In those days, going back 70 years ago, what would happen is a parent would have a child would go to a school and learn from the school. The child at school is learning about life, values about life from their teacher, and that's all they're learning from. Then the child comes home, they can relate to the parent because the teacher, what they taught them is from the same values and generation as the parents. I'm talking about I'm talking about the values of life. I'm not talking about when you were young, you probably learned that, molecule was the smallest thing we came across. Then you learned that atom was the smallest thing. Then you learned that there was, proton, neutron, electron. Then there were more things, but I'm from that generation. I haven't learned the new things, right? But now we learn about, other particles that are even smaller than that, right? I'm not talking about the technological differences. I'm talking about the difference in the values. Meaning, different in values. When you sit in a classroom, do you sit with your legs up on the chair in the face of the teacher, or do you sit with your legs down over there? When you meet somebody, do you say, "How are you, sir?" Or do you say, what do you say to them, right? These are the values of life that have changed over time. Is it okay to have relationship outside marriage? Is it okay to have how much relationship outside marriage? How adventurous should you be before your marriage? These values have been changing over time. If we go back 80 years ago, parents taught it to their kids, kids grew up, they taught it to their kids, they grew up, they taught it to their kids, it continued on and on and on. But over the last 50 years or so, since the advent of TV, and then after the TV is not the problem actually, but after the TV, in the last 20 years or so, when the standards and regulation started to loosen up, what is the natural thing that happened? The advertisers who want to make money, they will use whatever will sell and get them the attention of the people. As a result, they will push the boundaries of what is acceptable. So if you go back to the days of black and white TV, you would never find a man and a woman doing very much between each other. Nor would you find any of them undressed back in those days. Then the people who made the TV programs and the advertisers, they pushed the limits in order to grab the attention of the people. And then you had other TV shows. How many people remember a TV show called Happy Days? You're all very young guys, aren't you? Okay? Happy Days with, Fonz and, Mr. Cunningham, Mrs. Cunningham and all of this, okay? Happy Days was made, I think, late 60s or 70s, something like that. Back in that time, this show, Happy Days, was the one that pushed all boundaries that people knew at that time. And they did on screen things that they would never do before. And by doing this, they pushed the boundaries of what is acceptable and not acceptable publicly in a society by the youth and so on. That was Happy Days. If anybody watched Happy Days today, you will feel it's an ancient show. Because what was unacceptable before and Happy Days pushed the boundaries, then came other shows of the next generation like Cosby Show. Did anybody watch Cosby Show? Are you all too young to watch Cosby Show? Right? Okay, so the Cosby Show was another show that came that pushed the boundaries even more about what's acceptable and not acceptable. Happy Days looks like an ancient show compared to the Cosby Show. Then, of course, you had Big Brother. There were no boundaries after Big Brother, right? and you had Baywatch, and all those other shows that you had, right? You're probably a bit young at this time, but when these shows came out, there was a lot of complaining by the people in the society, saying that what they're showing here and what they're showing as acceptable, that has never been done before. That is not acceptable. But do you see the point? These shows, within a space of about 30 years, 40 years, they kept on pushing the boundaries of what is acceptable or not. As a result, what happened is, if you were somebody, let's say my older cousin's time, right? Not my time, my older cousin's time, or my uncle's time, you grew up at the time of Happy Days, then you felt that some things were acceptable that your parents thought was not acceptable. Who told you they were acceptable? The TV did. Who made the TV? The people who want to catch your attention to make money with their programs. Then, that's my uncle's generation. My generation watching Cosby Show, what we thought was right, our uncles thought that was not right. Then my generation after me, who grew up on Big Brother and all these shows, what they think is okay, I would just, be shocked at those things from the time I come in. So you see how and I don't know what's the latest thing, I need to go and check the TV guide to see what is the things pushing the boundary these days. But do you see my point? This is how the generation gap came in, where the new generation was now being taught by a mentor on the screen, on the TV. And they were learning new values, which their parents were never used to. And as a result, came a gap in the communication, in what is acceptable, in understanding life, in the way they looked at life between the parents and the children. And that's why this phenomenon of teenagers and generation gap was not there before. Teenagers is a natural part of life where physiologically and psychologically you start to discover the people around you. When you're a little baby, you cling on to your mum. As you get a bit older, then you discover dad. As you get a bit older, you discover grandma, granddad, uncles, aunties. When you reach the teenagers, that's when you are old enough to move into the society. The way God made us is He made us that at that stage, you start to discover friends and peers. This is natural. This was always there. But then, friends and peers together, having a total different way of thinking about life than parents, is a phenomenon since the generation gap came. Do you see my point? So now, the destruction of the family owes a lot to this generation gap between parents and children, which was not there about 90 years ago. So then, that's one of the factors for the destruction of the family between parents and children. We don't have much time to talk about it. There's a great writer, her name is Maryam Jamila. Maryam Jamila, she's a great writer. She's from America. She was a Jewish and she became a Muslim. And she's written a lot of books. She's got one book called Generation Gap and Its Consequences or something like that. I read that book like before many of you were born, about 20 years ago. But it's a real classic book. It's a really good book. It explains to you what I was saying with quotes from some of the leading people and so on. It's a great book. As I said, I read it a long time ago, but it's a great book. I recommend you to read that book. That's one of the contributors to the destruction of the family. Why? In what way? Because parents can no longer relate to their kids, and kids feel that the parents are dinosaurs from another generation. And as a result, they don't take from the parents about what life is. If mom and dad say something, they think, as the Quran expresses it, they say, Asatirul Awwaleen, old stories from the olden days. That's what they think. So that's why the kids, when they don't take from mom and dad, who do they take from? In my days, it was Ronald McDonald. Now Ronald McDonald ads are prohibited on TV because it's unhealthy for the kids. But these days, whatever the cartoons are, that's where the cartoons and TV programs, that's where the kids now learn about life. And that's why there is the gap. And when the connection is not there between the natural mentors, which is the parent, and the future of humanity, the kids, when the connection is not there, as a result, you can see the home is totally broken. Another of the contribution to destruction of the family actually just leads on from this is what I've already mentioned, is the mentor of the family, of the kids. The mentor of the kids is no longer the one who cares about the kids. If you saw my Facebook page about 2 weeks ago, I put up a status on there. I met one person, and I'm talking about a non-Muslim person, not just a Muslim. One non-Muslim lady I met when I was in America, she had, as I put on my Facebook page, she had about 7 kids. So I met her and her dad in Los Angeles. And I'm sitting in the bus, and they're across me on the other side. And normally, you have 7 kids, that means the whole bus is going to be shaking and rocking, right? And here, all the 7 kids were sitting next to mum and dad, like very, very nice kids. So I just couldn't help myself. The Prophet ﷺ said that wisdom is the lost property of a believer. Wherever he finds it, it's his. Meaning you benefit from the wisdom wherever you find it. So when I saw this great mum and dad doing a great job, I said, are these all your kids? And they were shocked, the big bearded guy asking. They probably thought I was going to blow a bomb as a terrorist. So they said, yes, these are all our kids. I said, wow, they're so well behaved. I said, do you mind if I could ask you, maybe what is 1 or 3 things that you've done with your kids that made them such great kids? One of the most important things they said is they said that they watch what the kids watch or take in from the TV, movies, computer games, and all of these things. Because as the mum said, and mind you, she's not a Muslim, she's a non-Muslim American lady, as she even noticed and said, and the dad agreed as well, she said, we as parents have dreams and ambitions for our kids' welfare. But the media has totally different goals from our own kids, from our kids. Meaning they're trying to exploit them, manipulate them, just to get the kids to buy stuff that they're selling, and they don't care in the way what morals they destroy or what boundaries they push. And this is a non-Muslim woman mentioning over there as well. So the point is, the mentors of our kids are no longer the ones who care about them and are informed about what's best, but they're people to exploit them. The third factor about the destruction of family is the parents themselves. The parents themselves know little about what to do with the kids, especially given all the changes that are happening. And also, we're living in a consumerist society where everybody is just all after buying. They work hard day and night for the sake of buying. Parents are busy. They don't have time to discover. They don't have time to even read one book about how to bring up their kids. And then they've got maybe 3 kids, 4 kids. So no wonder the parents find themselves in a situation where they don't know what to do. They love their kids so much, but they don't know what to do to help them. So the third thing is the parents themselves being too busy to attend a lecture or to read a book to discover about what their kids need. So these are 3 of the points that I noted down for the destruction of the family today. One is the generation gap and its consequences. Second is the mentors who are teaching who don't have the welfare of the kids at hand. Third, the natural mentors, the parents themselves knowing little because they're so caught up in all the busyness of this life and so on like that. Given that that's the case, what are the consequences as a result of it? The consequences, obviously, as a result, the new generation, they don't even know their own identity, let alone know the purpose of life. And I've heard this, wallahi, as I said, I've read from so many Muslims and non-Muslim therapists and others to do with marriage counseling, parenting counseling, and so on. And I've seen even so many Muslims and non-Muslims, and I'm saying non-Muslims even mention, and American non-Muslims to mention, that in our society today, they say, and this is, I'm quoting this, I'm not making this up, and I'm quoting this from some of the leading therapists in the world. They said that in our society today, especially the boys have little purpose in life and no little purpose on life. They have little purpose, no little purpose in life. And I've lost the identity, what it is all about. This is not Muslims mentioning it, this is non-Muslims mentioning it. And that's why if you look at Arab kids today, and I'm just saying Arab kids because Arabs are somebody who are known to be very, very caring about their kids, right? Others care as well. I'm not an Arab, so don't think I'm just leaving other nationalities. If you look at Arab kids today, so many Arab kids, right? Not always, so many Arab kids usually the daughters are doing very well, mashallah. They study well at school, well-mannered, good, and everything. And they go on to do very well in life. But the boys seem to be without an identity, knowing what to do in life. And the boys from young age, they're so energetic, maybe parents don't know what to do, just leave them out to go and play. And the girls keep close to the parents. So the boys go out and play and all of that. They grow up knowing little about the purpose of their life. When you ask a boy, who are you, what do you want to be in life? He says, I want to be Zainuddin, whatever his surname is, I keep forgetting. You know, the French soccer player, or Maradona, or Pelé, or something. That's all. You know, usually I joke about this, and I hope nobody takes it personally. You know, I won't mention the name of the country. A lot of the youth in a certain country, they are obsessed with soccer. And I always say to them, you know, look, you're so obsessed with soccer, but what's the highest you're going to get in soccer? Your country has never played even in the Olympics, let alone get into the final. So what are you dreaming about soccer? Go to something else where you'll get to the top of the world, right? But in any case, the point is, the kids these days, especially the boys, as so many people have pointed out, are there without purpose in life. As a result, as the sister pointed out before, when they grow up and become fathers, maybe they don't know much about how to be fathers. And they're not much of fathers at all, because they never knew that in the first place. So these are some of the consequences of the factors that we mentioned, and as a result you find so much juvenile delinquency amongst the youth, non-Muslim youth and Muslim youth as well. In fact, in Melbourne, where I come from, actually that's where I grew up, in Melbourne, so many of the youth in the northern part of Melbourne who are involved in crime, although they know nothing about Islam, but a part of their name is a Muslim name. Likewise in Sydney as well. But just to be fair, there are many other great Muslim youth as well. But there are these kind as well. So the point is that all this distancing between the parents and the children and all the breakup of the family contributes to the kids becoming these delinquents later in their lives and so on. So then what can we do when we become parents to try to do the best we can for those little kids who we care about the most in our lives? Every time I had a kid, I thought, my God, there's nothing greater in life than having a kid. Because they're the cutest, they're the most beautiful, the greatest experience. SubhanAllah, when they talk to you, when they come and hug you, they pull that smile, even though it might be for selfish reason to get a toy, but that smile that they pull, you know, when that happens, you feel like, my God, is there anything in the world I wouldn't sacrifice for them? So then for these kids, what can we do? What can we do for the future? And remember, Islamically as well, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned to us how important our kids are. Islamically, the Prophet ﷺ said, as you know the famous hadith, that إِذَا مَاتَ ibnu Adam, when the son of Adam dies, when the human being dies, إِنْقَطَعَ عَمَلُهُ إِلَّا مِنْ ثَلَاثٍ, their good deeds end, said the Prophet ﷺ. When you die, your good deeds are finished, except from three sources. What are the three sources? One is charity that you keep on benefiting other people with. You know, you've set up some charity and you've died, but it's benefiting other people even after you die. So you get the reward for it. Another thing is